like I say, good luck to all of you wonderful folks out there that are into the Back to the Land movement. We're definitely a silent revolution that's occurring. We don't get much press. We'll always take the back seat when it comes to the news, okay, because people are going in a different direction. Okay, so be different, okay, and enjoy your life.
Our journey continues with Ed Bernhardt of the New Dawn Center in Belle-Île-et-Dawn. Ed is the neighbor of Susanna Leff, who we interviewed in the first episode of the podcast. Susanna mentions Ed as the gentleman that she was recommended to by a friend in Hawaii back in the 80s who had land for sale. And then she came to Costa Rica not knowing how she would ever find this character. And synchronicity, circumstances brought them together. She bought land, and plenty of goods come since. Ed arrived in Costa Rica as a horticulturalist, although he refers to himself as a deep ecologist. And I'll let you listen to the episode to learn more about what that means to him. Ed's been teaching organics to youth here in Costa Rica before organics was even a thing. He shares stories about not only homesteading, but integrating with the local culture back in the 80s and 90s. He's currently working on providing online classes with local universities and provides permaculture assessments in the region. In this episode, Ed paints a vivid understanding of plants' relationships with microbiology. He also describes his fermented soil amendments and foliar sprays, which he calls kombucha for the plants. Let's visit the man who believes that the Back to the Land movement is nothing less than a silent revolution. All right, here we are today on this beautiful Tuesday at the New Dawn Center, or Finca Alba Nueva, with Ed Bernhardt, who is really a legend in this area. Ed has been here since about 1990, so it's about 30 years. Is that correct?
40.
40.
Yeah, I came in 1980.
You came in 1980.
Yes.
But the New Dawn Center was founded around 1990?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I picked up online. Wow, 40 years.
40
Definitely
years of, pura vida, as they say
pillar
here.
in the community here. Yeah. Ed has built a beautiful place here that we'll be taking a video of later to show off some of your cool projects. But more than that, this man has been responsible for literally countless plants put into the ground around this nation. He has been an author for several magazines and newspapers, both in English and in Spanish. He's written several books on organic gardening and medicinal plants. He has been a massive inspiration. I know even on my farm, you came out to our place when we first bought it. You did a permaculture assessment. You gave us some really great tips that we implemented. And we have a number of plants, including a gorgeous bamboo clump, 2 bamboo clumps from that clump right in front of me.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So such a pleasure to be here with you, Ed. Thank you for saying yes to this.
Welcome, for sure. It's a pleasure to have you here today, Jason.
Tell us a little bit about what made you buy land in Costa Rica and start inviting people to come share it with you.
Well, at that time, I was very young and adventurous, and I, to be truthful, wasn't very happy with the political situation in the United States, and so I was dreaming of a place that would be like tropical and a biological, botanical paradise that I could wander in. And Costa Rica also had this unique aspect to it. It had no army.
Right.
And that was a big one for me, okay? So I told my wife at that time, well, let's give it a shot. We'll take a plane down there and we'll end up checking it out, exploring Costa Rica and seeing whether or not we liked it. And so we took the plane and landed in Costa Rica in 1979, actually, the end of the year there. And I bought a truck and we began traveling around, just seeing what all the different parts of Costa Rica looked like. By the time 1980 rolled around, I found this piece of land, okay, which sort of fit into my checklist. Basically, we wanted to have a land that had rich, fertile soil, that was on the edge of a town so that it wasn't very remote. At that time, we had a 6-month-old baby, so going way out into the wilderness wasn't a very good idea. And so this also had a very interesting terrain to it, rich soil. The house was sort of away from the road, which was very nice to make it peaceful and quiet. I was just delighted to settle in to this new little land. And so through the years, we've been able to sort of go ahead little by little and trying to not make too much damage to the environment. I was very interested in during the university in ecology, and I wanted to be a deep ecologist.
Can you describe deep ecology
Well, at that time, that was sort of the key word. Like if you were really living harmoniously in the land, or were you just talking about ecology?
Okay, walking the walk.
Walking the walk.
All right.
See. So it was hard at many times in that first 10 years. We went through many difficulties and finally came out ahead as I developed a educational program here for students abroad.
And was that about how many years into your project were you before you started inviting people?
Probably from the 80s were more of working on the infrastructure here, like digging a well, which we had 3 attempts. We would dig down several meters and hit a big rock.
Wow.
So fill it up. And
what were you using to determine where to dig?
Well, first we started with the idea of having it close to the house, but we live in a riverbed.
Right.
So there's a lot of rocks. So little by little, we had to go up the hill into the sort of clay strata. And there we hit a nice well at about 4 meters, okay?
All right.
So that was quite an adventure for almost a whole year, and it was hand dug. So it was quite a process. And then fixing the house. The house that we live in has just been remodeled, and it's actually now 100 years old.
Huh.
So we have sort of the original flooring and the original infrastructure of it, the whatever they call that, the beams and such were the original ones. But it had a tile roof. Okay, and like you see in the movies, or
like
you see
curved clay tiles.
Yes, and it was very heavy, extremely heavy. And the house at that time was already 60 years old.
Okay.
And the wood was rotting. There were termites. There were
Costa Rica.
all kind of things, which meant that it needed a big overhaul. Okay.
Yeah.
So we took down the tile roof and put on a tin roof or a zinc roof. And by luck, a year later, we had the strongest earthquake in this area. Okay, and so luckily we did not have that old roof on top of our heads. And it was incredible to go through this incredible 7.6 Richter earthquake. The house was in a wave and screeched from the noise of the nails in the roof. And it was quite scary, actually. It was quite scary. And the tremors went on for several days. So it was quite a shakeup. But nothing that serious has happened since. I guess it relieved a certain pressure from the earth. But to go on, those years were getting into the gardening and Although I had gardened all my life, the tropical conditions made things a lot different. So there was a learning curve in figuring out what was I doing wrong that I wasn't getting good results, okay? And little by little, I was able to create a sort of process for growing organic vegetables without any harmful chemicals or anything as such, right here on the land that we were on. At the beginning of my educational work was working with local schools in their school gardens. And that was really rewarding and a joyful experience to watch these young little children get interested in gardening. Although many of them came from rural families and their mothers and fathers participated in agricultural work, the garden is not culturally part of their culture. Now, they like the Milpa. The Milpa is a word they use for the corn patch. Okay, so every year they would plant corn and beans and squash. But the idea of having a garden was not too popular. The children would do anything to get out of the classroom. And so every week I had an hour or two with them in their education for agriculture. And at first the teachers would say, "Oh, we've tried that and it doesn't work here." And so I said, "Please just give me the opportunity to try." And they said, "Okay, all right." So I would bring over a sack of composted chicken manure and some earth from our rich farm. And I activated the garden beds, and they had beautiful harvests. And the kids were all excited. And the teacher was very excited too, because it brought sort of more into the daily or weekly schedule. And at that time too, it's interesting to note that Costa Rica was also going through a crisis, economic crisis.
This is in the 90s.
This was in the 80s.
In the 80s still.
In the early 80s, the money was devalued from 9 colones per dollar to 20. And it snuck up to 22, okay? So there you can see that they devalued it so that the money was worth half of what it was worth. Being in touch here with my local neighbors were farmers and agricultural workers. That was a very sharp blow in their small salary that they would earn every week. In other words, it didn't make ends meet. So there was this national movement of Volver a la Tierra. President Monge at that time initiated, let's get back and produce food. And so I was right in that field of work, and so it became very popular. Okay, the schools, they really had more lessons in this, and the food that comes from the garden goes right to the cafeteria or the children's lunch program. And so they were getting more mustard greens and salad greens and things as such, so that their diet was actually more balanced than just rice and beans, and then beans and rice, and maybe some noodles or something as such. So it was a very good time. I really got to know my neighbors well. I learned who their children were, who their, brothers and sisters, their moms and dads. And so it was a great way to integrate into the society here, okay, as a friendly person, a friendly foreigner. And of course, today I still have good feelings about some of those children that are now 30 years old, okay, and they're working in town or whatever, doing some other things. So that was the 80s. Then the 90s, the opportunities came along to associate myself with different colleges and universities in the United States. And there we began inviting these students down for usually 3 weeks. They were mostly colleges where they could sort of plan their own curriculum, which was nice. Many other universities are too, structured that this didn't fit in. But it fit in well for us and also very well for them. And so even today we get emails and photos from these young people that had come 30 years ago to experience life in the tropics on a tropical organic farm.
So these were university student groups that you were bringing in?
Yeah, they were generally, they were juniors, sometimes a little further on in their education. And even today, for example, we're working with a college called Global College, which is a branch of the Long Island University. And they have a center in Heredia, Costa Rica. Well, this year they've been doing it virtually because of the pandemic. And so now I have 4 students this week that are helping me on the online infrastructure for our project.
So you can continue teaching.
Yes, and so we'll be working more on that level as we go on with this new normality, okay? So that sort of brings us to date, I think. And so all this time we've been basically about trying to tell people to grow gardens. My teacher, Edmond Bordeaux, called them ecological health gardens. This idea of raising food right on your land without harmful chemicals. And this is what really helps to give you good health, vitality, and stamina. I sit here now at 72 and feeling new. Okay.
Looking good, moving freely.
Because I've eaten well all those years. Okay. And so it does plays a great role in your health. So this is what we're continue to do. Of course, we're shifting now from perhaps having people come from around the world more into working locally. Most of our publications now will be in Spanish and our videos so that we get directly to the people here. I think the crisis is even worse than it was in 1980 because of the flu, which has entered the picture, okay, and caused a tremendous decline in the economy here. And so it's one thing to be poor and well-fed and happy, and it's another to be poor and unfed and no funds and unhealthy. So we would like to try and help people help themselves, in a sense, to grow food wherever they can, either in community scenes or individual, so that once you start eating a big salad every day, your health changes.
Definitely.
Okay? There's something about getting all those minerals from the land that makes your body function properly.
Supports the immune system.
Not only minerals, but vitamins, okay? And so the standard American diet, or the SAD diet, will lead to health problems, okay? And one of the simplest solutions is to change your lifestyle and start growing some of your own food.
You know, something you said, you're talking about the name of that program. I think you said it was the Ecological Health Garden. Is that what you said?
Yes.
And definitely the health benefits of eating from one's garden are something that I think a lot of people would say, well, of course. What I got out of that phrase is, and largely, due to having just seen the wonderful documentary that's recently come out, Kiss the Ground, and some other programs that are talking about how to best reverse our greenhouse effect and all these other climatic issues that we're dealing with, is in taking carbon out of the air and putting it into the soil and into plants. And that's something many people have known for a long time, but I think some of these documentaries have really brought to new light. And the idea of an ecological health garden really reminds me that not only can we personally get healthy from the garden, but really the health of our ecology depends on a massive return to the gardens, where we are putting more plants in the ground that not only help us, but that help the air we breathe, that help the health of the soil, that really bring this Eden type scenario to our ecology, which in too many places in the world has been stripped bare. And it's really wonderful to see so many, large scale permaculturists that are, turning deserts into oases through innovative tactics. And also how important and valuable it is just for individual people to start tearing up the grass, put some gardens in, plant a few extra trees that they can eat from, that are not only serving themselves, but literally creating a healthier environment around them.
Well put. And you can see that we have an inner ecology to care for, our health and our body, and we have an outer ecology to take care of. So this is a step toward that plan of harmonizing between the creation and yourself. I'd like to call it applied human ecology, where we're not just thinking about ecology, but we're doing something about it. And this can be one of the first steps, all right? And of course, people will have to organize themselves in different ways in suburban and urban areas. They'll have to work more on community gardens, where land could be obtained from like a building. A building could be retrofitted so that it could become a food supply center, where you would be farming hydroponically or aquaponically, getting fish. And so, there's people that have already done that, and the technological details are already in place. Of course, I'll probably be working more with rural people since that's where my neighborhood is. And so much to convince them of the benefits for their own health.
So when you're working with these people that are either, like in this case, we're talking about local people who have farms that have gone mainly to coffee, cows, bananas, things that really demineralize and denutrient the soil and create a fairly sterile environment. And now all of a sudden you're telling them, hey, grow food. And they're looking at their red clay being like, okay, where do I start? Because my coffee doesn't even work here anymore. And so you're teaching people how to go from, in many cases, barren land, and to start with what they've got to generate fertility so that they can get healthy food coming out of it. So what are your first recommendations to people when they're starting a project? And this applies too to a lot of, foreign landowners who want to start some kind of impact center. And many times we buy farms that have been denatured. And as permaculturists, a lot of us want to regenerate the land that we start working on. So what are some of the first things that people will want to do to improve their soil fertility and what are some of the first plants to put in the ground and so forth? What kind of advice do you have?
Well, right behind me, we have a garden which has been started in the last 6 months. And you start and you get dirty. Okay. a little bit of humor there. And composting. Okay, so that's enriching the soil that has been depleted. Okay, and
So you just composting your kitchen scraps, or what else do you do to build?
well, in our case here, we have many green pastures, and so I have one of my only gas engines that I have is a lawnmower with a basket that catches the greens. Okay, the clippings. And so from there, I mix that with the kitchen wastes. And
Do you dry the clippings first?
no,
You just put them in green.
I just put them all in there together. And within 2 months, I have rich, fertile soil that I can use for a new garden bed.
Okay, that's quicker than I would have suggested. So you're making a compost pile that has layers of kitchen scraps and cut grass.
Lots of organic matter.
Lots of organic matter.
Weeds from the garden.
Okay. But no dry material, no carbon-rich dry stuff?
I have a tendency to favor quick composting.
Okay.
And so there are sometimes leaves that go into it. But I would say that it's more on the green side than the brown side.
And so to turn this into fertile soil in 2 months, are you turning it to aerate it?
Well, that's it. The more you turn it, the quicker it comes ready for the garden plants. The other is something that we'll talk about a little later, is the use of these bio-fermented cultures. Okay, which has changed the gardening game. And has made it much simpler to do tropical gardening and gardening in general because of these biological microorganisms which become key players in breaking down this compost and making it available to the plants. Okay, they also act as guardians on the leaves. If you spray it on the leaves, they prevent harmful pathogenic bacteria and other microbes from living on your plants. So I'm really anxious to tell you about that, but let's go on and talk more about the simple basics of composting, which are...
Well, to build the bridge, though, you're making these bioferments, which we'll see in a video later that listeners can find in the show notes. There'll be a link to the YouTube video. But you're making these bioferments, and then are you using that to inoculate your compost so that it composts faster? That's what we're saying.
You inoculate all your garden beds, the soil around your plants, and in a much smaller proportion in a foliar spray on the leaves.
So it's not only a fertilizer, but it's also like a pesticide?
It's a perfect...
Or maybe not a pesticide, but
it really helps a lot for plant diseases, okay? Gets rid of the fungi and bacterias that like to live on our domestic plants, causing them often death, from the growth on them.
And this is what...
So they have what they call the wilts, okay? These are different microbes that climb across your tomatoes and turn them black or gray. And,
these are the fungus generated generally.
Some others are bacterias, okay? And so it's almost like you overpopulate your garden and your soil with these beneficial microbes, and they just say, look, there's no room for you here. Okay, this is for locals only. So I'm very, very happy with that. It's probably been about 5 years now that we've been using them. And now I just sort of go around and spray these different amendments onto the plants and into the compost. And things just are easier, and you have more success rate at growing your vegetables.
Super. Is this the method that I've learned called Bokachi? Or is this a little different than the Bokachi recipe?
It's basically these bioferments do come from Asia, and they have been refined here by the work of many of the organic farmers in the last 2 decades. And so dispersion of this information now is occurring through universities and other institutions like INA. Are you familiar with the
I am.
Instituto Nacional de Aprendizaje, the apprentice, where young people can go and learn many different trades for free. And so one of theirs is organic farming. So it's done a lot there. They've been
Wonderful.
one of the focal points of developing this. So I have a manual which I send off for free to anybody who asks for it, so they can get busy making their own ferment, which you can make from basically organic things that come right from around the farm. Okay, and
Do you think we could offer that to our listeners somehow?
Sure.
All right.
So if you want to make a small batch, basically you need a 5-gallon bucket, plastic bucket, with a top that'll seal well. And to that bucket, you add 3 shovelfuls of finely sifted compost, your best compost. Added to that, you add a 1/2 gallon of molasses. Plenty. Okay, well, it's a resource here that's very available because they grow a lot of sugar cane.
And they strip it from the sugar to make white sugar. Yeah.
It's basically a crude molasses, okay, that has
Byproduct.
all the nutrients of the sugar cane. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to add it to this super liquid fertilizer,
To feed the microbes.
and it will also feed these microorganisms. Next, we're going to add a gallon of whey. Okay, whey is the liquid that comes off of the process of making cheese. So it's very available in our area here, as many dairy farmers are located nearby. Next, we're going to add pure water. It can't be chlorinated water, okay, because this may affect the growth of these little microorganisms that are very sensitive to that chlorination. So you need some kind of spring water or rainwater, which doesn't have those kind of impurities in it. I also add about a handful of ashes, okay, to give it a little more of the mineral content. And then I stir it up and I seal on the lid. And if it has like a little spout on it, you want to make it so that it's not real tight, but enough so that as the gas forms from this bubbling brew that we've just made, okay, it's almost like making a vinegar. You want a little air in there, but you don't want it so that it will be like tight and might
The air needs
pop
to
the
escape,
top
yeah.
of the gallon or the container, okay? So you have to wait a month and a half. And in the first week, you can shake the bucket and sort of mix it up again to make sure that the nutrients are getting well distributed. And then from there, you can just put it away in a shady place. And in a month and a half later, you come and you open it up.
So it's anaerobic. You don't need to pump any
it
air
goes
into it.
through first an aerobic process, and then deep in the bottom of this, an anaerobic process goes on. So you're going to get sort of both. You're going to get both types of microorganisms. For example, deep down in the soil, there's not much air there, see? So that's where this level of microorganisms will settle to do their work, whereas the ones like from the whey from the milk, well, those will work in aerobic conditions. So you get sort of both of them from this, what I call kombucha for the plants.
Right, which is a
Which is a
symbiotic
vinegar,
mix
right?
of
Okay,
fungus
it's a
and
drink
bacteria.
for your plants.
Yeah.
They love it. Okay. So it's also been a little product that I can now distribute it at the farmers markets.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see everyone start their own little batch of this wonderful Bioferment. And it makes gardening very easy.
So cool.
There's no more, problems with your compost not coming out right. And many times before, I'd have so many problems with leaf infections. And now, as you can take a look out there, those tomatoes are right out there in the hardest rains, and they're green and moving on to producing tomatoes.
Does this work also to keep the wasps away from papayas?
I have my reserves on that one. I don't think it's so much for the insects.
Okay.
But if you'd like, we can also share for the gardeners a simple kitchen insect control.
That would be great. You explained the ferment so well. Yeah, bring us something else. And so we've got, do you want to explain a little bit, an overview of the insecticide now?
So, I don't know, many years ago, I began working with harmless insect controls. I don't like to be using poisons on my lettuce. And so I was avoiding at all costs these kind of chemicals, which they sell at the agricultural supply stores. And one time I was reading a little manual on hydrogen peroxide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And hydrogen peroxide is a wonderful disinfectant. You notice when you put it on a cut that's been infected, it bubbles.
Yeah.
All right. And so this little manual was how you could use it internally to fight infections. And also it had a little part on a spray for your garden. They called it, the plant spray, plant protector spray. That's what it was. Okay. So you were to take a half a cup of sugar or brown sugar or molasses. And in that you were to add another half cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide, okay? And then you mix that up and you put it in a quart of water, about 1 liter. You spray it on your plants.
That's it? You don't let it sit for any period of time?
No, okay. So the hydrogen peroxide works on cleaning the leaf surface, okay? And the sugars feed the leaves.
Directly?
Yeah, they have little stomas. They're like pores within the leaf, and they can absorb that.
Oh, okay.
Now, we all know that leaves can produce their own sugars through photosynthesis, but this is just like a little bonus.
Little steroids or something for them.
Okay. And so they absorb that and they turn dark green.
And this works with any kind of sugar, white sugar, brown sugar, or molasses.
Yeah, well, I'm a little in favor of the molasses, right?
Okay, more minerals.
Because it has more minerals,
right.
Okay? But the original recipe I read was pure white sugar, okay? And I was amazed at how wonderful it worked on repelling insects too, particularly chewing insects. All right, now I'll digress a little to explain something that researchers found. They found that organic vegetables that were real green and healthy, they had a lot of sugars in their leaves. And when they had high levels of sugar, the bugs would not eat it. They said those sugars would affect their metabolism and they would sort of get drunk. Well, they were smarter than humans, so they would leave it alone. So that's why you'd see if you have a plant that has yellow leaves, it will become prone to attack, much like the shark eat the sick fish and, the sick animals are fed to the wolves. And so it was wonderful. As long as I kept my plants healthy and green, I didn't have any troubles with certain bugs like the little cucumber beetle, which northern gardeners know is abundant here too, and eats the leaves out of young corn plants and bean plants and cucumbers, you name it. these little guys will just eat the leaves apart. Well, if I kept my plants healthy and green, they didn't come around. So it was like I won the battle without firing a shot.
Okay.
I was so happy with this new discovery. Okay. And also you enhance the plant, right?
So how often do you spray this mix?
Well, now life changed. Okay.
Okay.
Now I use the brown sugar, tapa dulce. Okay.
Sure.
Perhaps some of our listeners don't, but it's basically a cake of brown sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put it in a little water on the stove, you can make a honey from it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's miel de tapa dulce, or the honey from the sugarcane molasses. So that's what I use in this formula. I use half a cup of that and a half a cup of the kombucha for the plants.
Instead of the hydrogen peroxide.
Instead of hydrogen peroxide. So now I don't have to go to the drugstore and buy that.
Okay.
I've got my own, and they love it. It works just perfectly fine, this new combination.
So you use your ferment on the soil and in your compost, but then when you do your foliar sprays, you add this.
I add the brown sugar and this bioferment in a diluted form, and it grows right on the plants and protects the plants. And it seems to, because it's a vinegar, right? It's a fermented, it seems to cleanse and protect the leaves from these pathogenic microbes that can get established on the leaves.
Bonus.
Yeah.
Love it.
And the plants
I'm gonna try
grow
it.
beautifully. And so there's much less insect predation and plant diseases.
Okay. That's super. Are there any other preparations you want to share with the audience right now that come to mind that are kind
I
of
think those are the
cornerstones?
two significant ones, okay? And just to say that it's really important that we recycle our wastes. And so this is a key factor in the applied human ecology, is no matter where you live, shred up your newspapers and try and compost whatever you can. In urban areas, you have to be a lot more careful, having enclosed structures so you don't get a problem with rats. Even here, I have certain challenges with armadillos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But those things can be taken care of, okay?
A little fencing.
There are units that you can buy, like revolving drums, and you can put your organic waste right in your apartment and turn this drum, and in 1 month you have rich, fertile soil for potted plants, a Mediterranean potted kitchen garden, okay, right on your balcony, okay? So as you can see, gardening also is really entertaining and a lot of fun to do, okay?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing for elderly people, a wonderful therapy, okay? So hopefully we'll see a lot more of this movement. Usually as times get hard, people go back to growing a lot of their own food, raising some of their own animals, chickens for eggs, and rabbits were a big one during the Depression. So I can see that we can make a good thing out of a hard times.
Yeah.
It just takes a certain spirit of cooperation and enthusiasm for what we're doing.
And, a lot of times just that little bit of willpower to push ourselves forward is the only way to find the enthusiasm. I know for myself, I've spent months preparing for this podcast and this whole mission that I'm on to share these stories. And it's put me behind the computer more than I'd prefer to admit. I'm 6 days a week, spend a lot of time on the computer. And thankfully, we take Sundays off and just really not go there. Yeah. And as a result, I look outside and it's like, oh, okay, well, we're in wet season. Let's go plant some things. So we've been bringing home lots of cuttings and different things. And so most Sundays, I've been in the garden planting things, working with the earth. And during the week, I know that it's good for me to take a break and go to the garden. But when you're in that mindset of go, 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 work, 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 struggle, we often tell ourselves stories about, oh, I can't afford to do that. And now that I'm in this rhythm of putting my hands in the dirt on Sundays, I'm really realizing like I can't afford not to do it. I can't afford to not take the break. I can't afford to not reconnect, to unplug. And from that place of connecting, I think it's only then that I realized that what a different mind state I've been in. And you got to really, for me, I've got to really push myself to get out and get back to those practices to remember how good it feels. It's like fasting or doing a nutritional cleanse where, we're eating go, 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 drinking coffee, doing our daily yeah. And then we're like, no, I really know I need to do a cleanse. Then we take a week's break from food. And we're like, oh my gosh, I knew it logically, but you can't really remember the feeling from that other place of feeling. And so, yeah, same thing with gardening, just getting some kind of rhythm to getting back into it is so nourishing.
Well, I can see that many people have work during the week, and so the weekend is a great time to do some gardening. And like we were talking about, it's a win-win situation, win for the environment and win for ourselves at the same time. Sometimes in the times that we're living in now with all the uncertainty, it's easy to get depressed, right? And you have to be real careful. And one of the things that if we feel sometimes like there's nothing that we can do about the situation, what will really make us feel good and our hearts full of joy is when we make achievements with our personal self. For example, improving our health. Okay, now if you have a chronic illness, you begin to become a fan of ensaladas, excuse me, I'm speaking Spanglish here, salads, okay, well, you're going to see some results. You're going to wake up feeling more vital, a lot of the aches and pains go away, and so you'll get that feedback from your body, and that will give you a lot of self-confidence that you can move on, okay? So working on your health is one of the best aspects of gaining a good feeling about yourself and your place in the world at this moment. So I wish everyone out there health and happiness, and that you too can, no matter where you're at, experience an improvement in the quality of your life, both for yourself and for the environment.
So what do you think, Ed? We've got an audience of who knows how many that are, they either have land or they want to buy land. They have land and they have people there, but they're struggling. They're trying to make it sustainable. What kind of advice could you give in general to people that are trying to do some kind of beneficial project like this that you've learned over the years that you could offer a little insight?
Well, start small, okay, and then build from there, okay? And many times people overstretch in their project, and then if there's a weak part in it, it could fall apart. But if you work on small steps, usually you can sort of take care of the little adjustment that needs to be made and then move forward again. So that would be my best suggestion, is to go small. And as you can see in the economy that we're in right now, it's better to be able to sustain oneself and work from there, whereas trying to, for example, borrow a lot of money and start a business might be pretty high risk. In my opinion, agriculture, in a sense, is a high-risk project. You can have really bad weather that'll wipe out hundreds of hours of your work. So be careful in that sense of not taking too many risks and working on what is sustainable, what will persevere. It's like in permaculture, what is permanent. I've always been real low key too, as one of those items for success of trying to keep a reasonable budget and not overspend on superficial things. That's just one of the reasons that I'm still here for 40 years, that I've been able to live very frugally. So best of luck out there to all of you who are into returning to nature. As you can see, there's a small group of us who are dedicated to living that kind of lifestyle. I call them naturophiles, okay? People are nature lovers. And there's a lot of technophiles out there, okay? Technocrats that are moving in the other direction toward factories and laboratories and apartments. So follow your dreams and just be careful as you go, or we might say full of care, okay? Care with your plants and with your family so that things will flourish and thrive as you go along. The road isn't all roses, and so there'll be times when it's tough and you just have to persevere, you know.
Yes, it is the key.
This
the only way to
for
fail
us
is to give up.
Is, you know, luckily it's difficult, but it's not impossible because we have, you know, the assets around us to grow our own food, and we have very few utilities to pay. And so, like I say, good luck to all of you wonderful folks out there that are into the Back to the Land movement. We're definitely a silent revolution that's occurring. We don't get much press. We'll always take the back seat when it comes to the news, okay, because people are going in a different direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so be different.
Yeah.
Okay, and enjoy your life.
Wow, this so much great advice from somebody who's been doing it longer than most and still going strong and healthfully and beautifully. So thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom with us. You have this other body of wisdom that you've already shared with the world that I mentioned earlier, your books. And I don't exaggerate when I say that your Medicinal Plants of Costa Rica book, either in English or in Spanish, is one of the most common books that I see in people's bookshelves as I travel the country. It's really impressive. So can you tell people a little bit more about how to find your books?
Fine. I was trained in botany in the university that I went to, and it's always been a love of mine. And when I came to Costa Rica, it was like almost like a new planet, you know, the lush tropical plants. And I had just a field day for the first 5 years, learning as much as I could about medicinal plants. And for years after that, we used this text that I made as the course for students that came from other colleges and universities. And then finally, I was approached to make it into a book form by a publishing company in Costa Rica. And so I thought, yes, it might not be, you know, I won't become a millionaire writing this book in Costa Rica, but it will be good for people to know these herbs, and it'll give me a lot of exposure in terms of writing a book. And sure enough, it was. It became sort of a bestseller in terms of Costa Rican books in English. So It was a very humble number of books, but I was very glad and pleased that I could fit a little niche as an author here. Actually, my first book was the Organic Home Gardening Guide for Costa Rica. And both books now are available in ebook PDF form. And if anyone's interested, we'll give you a little more of the details on that later.
Yeah, I'll definitely have the links to that in the show notes.
And the other course that we ran for many years was medicinal plants and tropical therapies for health therapies. And so I wrote a book on that too, which is available on how to, for example, detoxify. You were mentioned that a little earlier, like, oh, I feel like I got a detox. Okay, well, it's really good sometimes to take a weekend off and go through one of these sort of intermittent fasts so that you can cleanse out your body and nourish it with different types of green juices and other fruit juices. So yeah, those are the things that were part of my contribution for people that are interested in putting these kind of things into their life, using medicinal plants instead of pharmaceuticals, growing their own food instead of going to the market and buying commercial agricultural products. Okay. Bueno, so what else can we talk about here?
Well, I just want to make sure that, we've got people directed to your books, and you've also mentioned that you're going to be taking your education platform online. And, I just want to make sure that listeners can really have a way to find you. You've got your website here, the newdawncenter.info, which we'll be linking to, and your Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Finca Alba Nueva.
No, I think that's a little wrong. No, it's the New Dawn Center.
The New Dawn Center on Facebook.
On Facebook too. Okay. That's for English-speaking people.
Okay.
And we're in the process. Within the next month, we'll probably have a new website up called Alba Nueva. Okay. And it'll be Spanish first. I think it's going to be .info.
Okay.
One of these energetic students is working on that right now for me.
I'll get it exact from you before I leave.
So the newdawncenter.info right now is real accessible. And there's a blog and talks about our different projects.
So your online teaching is going to be through the new website?
I think so.
Okay, great.
It'll be Spanish first. And I'm going to be offering many things on Google Drive, okay? There'll be free material that you can download, and we'll also ask donation for certain books so that we can keep our project moving ahead.
Absolutely. And on location here, you've now opened up some small groups to do teaching here on the farm. Are you welcoming guests yet or not quite yet?
By the way, we're having a workshop on Saturday, and it looks like we have 24 people coming for a garden and medicinal workshop program for 3 hours. So it looks like we're going to have quite an event. I'd like to invite you too if you'd like to come, and if you'd like to do any recording or video work, con mucho gusto.
All right. We'll see how that works into the schedule.
Okay. So yes, that's what we do a lot. That's in real time, or real.
But otherwise, you have internships that you offer here.
We will. I've already done 45-minute video on medicinal plants in English and Spanish. So there's 2 separate videos. We did those with university students here about 5 years ago. And we hope to do more of that, have our site with I do have a YouTube channel too. Okay, the New Dawn Center, on YouTube. And there you can see the little clips of this on ginger and turmeric and pau de arco, the different medicinal plants that we use here.
Super.
So
Looks like there's
we're
lots
trying
of great
to put
ways
it
to find
together.
you.
We're trying to put it together here so that we're sort of updated and ready to go on the virtual level.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I was sort of, I must admit, rather judgmental about it. But I'm throwing my old judgments aside and getting into the media as an expression of education and what we've been talking about.
I can definitely relate.
Okay.
Ed, thank you so much for your time. We're going to go explore some of your ferments on video.
Okay.
And it's just been a pleasure
Yeah.
to see you again and catch up
Okay.
and have this great conversation. Thank you.
Okay. And the audience, thanks for listening too. Okay.
Yeah, what a pleasure to spend the day with a man as kind and connected to his garden as Ed Bernhardt is. Countless farms in this country have Ed to thank for the insights that he's shared over the years. A huge thank you, Ed, from all of us. Today, Ed shared with us 2 of his recipes for his bioferments and his foliar sprays, and we've created a PDF with those recipes to share with you. You can find those in the show notes. Also in the show notes, we actually have a bunch of really great value for you. Besides the PDF that he created in English, we also have in Spanish his entire 34-page ebook describing his Biofermentos recipes with graphic illustrations describing the hows and the whys that he teaches in his courses to university students. You'll also find a link to his very popular book, Medicinal Plants of Costa Rica, which I highly recommend checking out. I really like what Ed was saying about how recycling our waste is central to our sustainability. It's not an understatement. The carelessness at which people are disposing of valuable resources and turning them into environmental hazards is heart-wrenching when you consider the magnitude of it. Not to mention the fact that we have sustainable solutions for nearly all of these items. His message to compost what you can, create your own soil, and raise your own food is as timely as it is eternal. If you enjoy hearing stories about soil building, community, or even natural building, make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review to let others know how much you've been absolutely loving the mission of this show.